have a crush on anybody growing up? Maybe it was the boy or the girl next door, maybe a brother or sister's friend, maybe one of the teenage heartthrobs of whichever generation you might have been in, that those were there. We've got some pictures of some of them that I found. Yeah, remember? Remember how good it felt? Oh my gosh, my heart, I'm in love, right? That infatuation that we felt, we thought it was love. And some people get stuck there in that infatuation, thinking that that might even be not only real love, but unconditional love. And then we're always looking for that ideal and never quite finding it. Never quite finding it. And we're talking about this today. We're talking about aligning our lopsided perceptions. Sometimes we see the world this way, don't we? Yeah, a little lopsided. A little lopsided. The perceptions of infatuation being unconditional love, and the stories that we make up about the things that happen to us in our life, right? Because that's what our life is the meaning that we've assigned to the things that have happened to us, and then the stories that we tell about those meanings, those things that have happened. And we're going to look at some of that today. I have often wondered, as I've heard the phrase unconditional love, does it even exist? Does it even exist? Because in reality, I mean, even parents, they love their children as soon as they're born, but let them fail in school or date the wrong person or misbehave. Even temporarily, there may be a pullback in that in some areas. It can feel conditional to the child who feels like they've done something wrong and they're no longer loved, depending on how the discipline is applied, right? We make up these stories about this stuff. And the same is true in our relationships, our careers, our finances, our health. We make up those stories. We make up those stories. John D. Martini, in our book of the month, Count Your Blessings, says that anger blocks unconditional love. And I would suggest that any strong emotion is going to block unconditional love, isn't it? Any strong emotion is going to block that, because that emotion comes up as the wall or the wave, and it can block the idea of unconditional love. I had a friend who used to say when I was back in my 20s, all anybody wants is to be loved. That's all anybody really wants. And in my 20s, I couldn't see that. I couldn't get that. It's like, oh, no, I want so many things besides that. But as I've grown and matured and deepened in my spirituality, I see that really most all of the suffering is a cry for love, isn't it? It's a cry for love on some level. And many times we don't even know that's what it is. We think it's something else because we're so outwardly focused on the effects of the world and the effect that it's having on us that we get caught up in that. Ernest Holmes, our founder and the author of The Science of Mind, says man's three greatest needs are to feel that he is needed, wanted, and loved. Needed, wanted, and loved. To feel that we belong to the universe in which we live, and to have an object or objects upon which we may lavish our affection. We may lavish our affection. I think that's why we have such a plethora of pets in our lives these days. Many of us growing up didn't see that level of particularly inside animals and service animals and things like that we see today. And I think it has to do with this idea of lavishing our affection, because that's unconditional love, isn't it? That's unconditional love. Yeah. So if this is true, that these are the things that we want, why is it that we put so many conditions in the way of love? Well, they've got to be this, they've got to be that, it's got to look like this, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, it's got to be this, and then I'll love it. But it's got to behave this way, because if it doesn't behave that way, then I'm not going to love it anymore, right? We put conditions out there. Now, this is not a talk about things like boundaries and values and all that kind of stuff. This is a talk about understanding the things that we put in our way, our own way of experiencing and expressing love. Okay, that's what we're talking about today. Most faith traditions tell us what? God is love, right? It's one of the first Bible verses many of us learned as little children if we were in that faith tradition. God is love. We said that in the Christmas pageant. In Science of Mind, we believe that God is love. God is all that there is, and it's in, through, and as everything, that it makes everything out of itself, which is the God essence and substance and presence. If that's the case, then I am manufactured, made of, created of love, right? I am created of that. So how am I, why is there a problem? Why is there not just love everywhere with everybody? Why do we not see love everywhere? Well, I think it might have something to do with this wonderful thing we call choice, right? We all have freedom of choice to choose how we want to define what that love is. We're individualized and unique expressions of the divine. So we can choose how we want to express that in our lives, how we want to express this thing that we are called love. How do we want to do that? The other thing is that we have all these powerful emotions as these human expressions. And we don't necessarily know how to supervise them, do we? All the time. Yeah, sometimes they can take over. And again, it's that wave or that rush or that wall of emotion that can block our love, incoming or outgoing, right? And combine that with the fact that there are about 7 billion of us on the planet running around, bouncing into each other, having different ideas, perspectives, and opinions about things, then we have all of this stuff that's giving us opportunities to observe, right? Or have our own strong opinions, depending on how we choose to perceive it, right? That's what we're talking about, is perception. So that's a recipe for conditions that don't look much like love, that don't look real godlike. And we turn on our news and we see it reflected back at us, don't we? So what can we do? What can we do to be more loving, to experience and express more love? John DeMartini has created a process he calls the DeMartini method. And it is in the book of the month that we're studying, Count Your Blessings. And no, it's not have a martini and call me in the morning, okay? Just let's be clear on that. I know I stuttered over that last week, but that's not what we're talking about. It is a process that we can take ourselves through that helps us to realign these lopsided perceptions that we may have about things in our life. Things that we've allowed to define us perhaps to this point in our life that maybe aren't serving us like they did before. Remember when I said I was 20 and I didn't understand? I've grown and expanded some. There may be some old ideas back there still that I'm hanging on to that I just haven't been able to see, So I want to ask you to recall or even imagine a situation where something happens in your life. Either something that you know is there from the past that is something that is, maybe you're sensing maybe blocking you, or maybe just imagine in a situation. You react. Let's say somebody cuts you off in traffic, or somebody comes into one of the long Christmas lines. You've been standing there forever to buy your product, and they cut right to the front of the line, right? You react. You have an experience of that, don't you? You have a judgment about that. How rude, how terrible, how this, how that, whatever your reaction may be. John has a very compelling story in the book. Now, this book is filled with stories. Those of you that are in book study, there's a lot of stories in the book. This particular one is rather compelling. You may have a story as painful or even worse, but I ask you to hold the story lightly this morning, okay? Hold the story lightly. Mark was one of the people that came to one of his workshops, and they were about to do this process. And Mark had been abandoned as a newborn in a hospital trash can. He was rescued by the nurses, restored to health, and returned to his birth mother. who then abused him for about 16, 17 years after that, locking him in the closet, burning him with cigarettes, starving him, and just generally abusing him. He carried that rejection, that hurt. You can imagine that story. He carried that with him for his life. And at about 35, he's in this conference with John. And John asks the first question in his method, which is, tell me about your situation. And he said, I hate my mother. She rejected me and hurt me. I hate my mother. And that's where they started. John suggested that he was going to return to a place of gratitude, find a place of gratitude, and unconditional love for his mother before he left the day. You can imagine Mark's reaction. He scoffed. Sure. But I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to do the process. I need to heal this in my life. So by the end of the workshop, it is true, he did move to gratitude for his mother and a feeling of unconditional love and appreciation for her through doing this process. I'm going to show you the process in a little bit. But closer to home, that's a big, traumatic story in healing, isn't it? To transform that birth story into love and gratitude. Yeah, powerful. But let's take it to something we can use in our everyday life. I was in the car with a friend this week, and we pulled into a parking lot, and it's one of those parking lots that's one way, right? Everybody has to go the same way and around the circle. Well, as we pulled in, two cars met us head on, and we were right at the big arrow going this way. We're going this way, and two cars coming this way. Well, my friend, she got very upset. Oh my gosh, I can't believe people don't know how to drive. They just going off. And of course made the immediate assumption, snowbirds, oh my gosh, they're all over the place. And it was just really interesting. And we drove around, and of course you had to go around like this, and what happened, they met us on the other side, and there they were again. Oh my gosh, people can't drive. Just going on and on. My friend was very upset. So much so that it became the, Mexican standoff, so to speak. And I said, this is probably not going to be fruitful. Perhaps if you move over, then everybody can pass and we can go about having dinner. And so after a few moments, she did move over and everybody got parked. And she dropped me at the door to get the reservation, and she went and parked, and then it took forever. And I thought, uh-oh, something's happened in the parking lot. So I was ready to go out and search for her, and here she came walking in, and she was fine. And I said, I thought I was going to have to come rescue you. And she says, oh, no, it's all fine. I just had to park a long way away. And I was like, okay. And she said, can you believe people drive the wrong way in there? What is wrong with people? The arrows were just quite clear. And I said, did you realize that you drove in through the exit only sign driveway? True story. And she went, no, I did not. So having done this work this week and recognized the compelling piece of the story, we all make mistakes. Has anybody in this room never made a mistake ever? Please stand up. We all make mistakes. We make them all the time, don't we? It's how we learn and how we grow. Why can't we cut each other slack? Why is it so important to us to make the other wrong, to blame, to point out the flaws, rather than going, oh, oops, can I help you? Oh, goodness, you're driving the wrong way. Let me scoot over so you can pass. I know you're probably horribly embarrassed by this, aren't you, to be driving the wrong way. Yeah. Cut some slack to our fellow human beings. But in working the process and recognizing, just like Mark's story with my friend, for her to have the realization and to watch her come to that place of equilibrium and balance, because that's what he's talking about in this, is bringing our emotions. It's not all bad and horrible, and it's not all good. It's kind of that Zen philosophy, isn't it? Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about grateful for what is as it is. Grateful for what is as it is. It's all part of this process. It's woven all through this book. But the nuts and bolts of it are in chapter 25, which is the last chapter of the book. And he really points out the 3 questions that we can ask in walking through this process. But being grateful for what is as it is an important practice in our lives, rather than pushing against and resisting. That begins to allow us to open up through gratitude to that unconditional love, which then leads us to inspiration. Is inspiration a healthier place to live than resistance and fear and frustration, anger? Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Ernest Holmes reminds us that every heart responds to warmth and love. Imagine that person's coming at you the wrong way in a parking lot, and you roll down your window and you go, peace, something, hi, come on by. Oh my gosh, I've done this so many times. You'd probably meet a friend and get a story, wouldn't you? I couldn't believe I did this. I'm so embarrassed. Thank you. You were so kind to help me get by. Instead of, what would you like for me to do? Back up? Right? Every mind yearns for its embrace, and no life is complete without love. Love alone can heal the world and cause people to live together in unity and peace. Isn't that what we want, really? Unity, peace, safety, security, feeling connected, a sense of bond, a sense of love. Yeah, that feels good. John suggests that gratitude is the doorway inward to discover the greatest force in existence, unconditional love. But does it exist? I think it does. The more that I have studied and deepened in my spiritual practices, the more I recognize that it is inside. It is that place of spirit that lives, moves, and has its being within us. That is the place of unconditional love. God does not judge. People judge. We've been taught that there's a judging God. We've been taught that there's an angry God. There's not. God is love. God is love, and love resides within us. We are created of it. It moves in us, and we move in it. It's non-separable. It does exist. It's like the psalmist said, be still and know that I am God. And it requires that stillness to be able to tap into that place within us. John reminds us that unconditional love isn't just a passion or positive emotion. It's a complete merging of all of the emotions, positive and negative. And it takes you to that state of inspiration. It is the greatest force in existence. It has no boundaries, limitations, or opposition. It embraces everyone and everything equally. It embraces everyone and everything equally. It's the energy and light that's born when positive and negative emotional charges are perfectly balanced. Imagine a day like that. Imagine an hour like that. An hour of your life where positive and negative are perfectly balanced, and there's no resistance, there's no up, there's no down, there's just peace. Just peace. I'd take a spa day like that. Yeah. Balance, equilibrium, unity, peace, things that we strive for. John's process, this DeMartini method, takes us through that process to assist us in balancing those positives and negatives. It leads us to take a balanced look at every situation in our life. The things that are happening today, the things that happened last year, and the things that happened 30 years ago. We get to look at them, and we can move them through this process of healing and transformation. Asking ourselves, does this really serve me? How did the situation serve me? How did it hurt me? How can I find balance in that? How did it make me who I am today? How can I take the healthy pieces of it? How can I find gratitude for it? So let's move into our practicing the principles this week and see this process. I'm going to use the John DeMartini method and just show, I'm not going to use it, but I'm going to give you the steps of it and explain it to you so that you've got a tool, another tool in your toolbox of spiritual tools for healing and transformation in your life. So the first thing that we do, the first question, is to write down what you perceived as negative about the situation, circumstance, or event. Keep writing. Write. Remember Mark? Mark had 5 pages of all of the negative things about his mother and what she had done to him in his life. 5 pages. It may take all day. It may take you a half a day. Just take the time to work the situation if it's something that's very large in your life. Number 2, write an equal number of positives about the same situation. Now imagine Mark's condition as he's just gotten all of this out with 5 pages of stuff. And now John says, write an equal number of positive things. And he said, there's not one thing positive about this, not one. And John said, well, you need to think. There's got to be at least one. So he did, and he kept thinking, and he kept writing, and he kept thinking, and he kept writing. And then he laughed, and then he kept writing, and he came up with an equal number of positives, recognizing in that moment that it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all bad. Imagine what began to happen in his psyche in that moment. Imagine what would happen in yours in that moment of realization. Number 3 then is to go back to that negative column and pick 3 examples where you have done the same thing to someone else. Maybe not the same action or activity, but the result of how they felt was the same. Mark's reaction in this question was, well, I can assure you I have never thrown away my child. Valid? John asked him, he said, where have you had an experience where you've done something with someone and they felt rejected or hurt? And he froze. He said, I left my fiance 2 weeks before our wedding date. John said, how did she feel? He said she felt hurt and rejected. John asked him, he says, did you love her? He said, not only did I love her, I still love her. And in that moment, his healing occurred. Because he recognized that he could love someone and still hurt them, which is the same thing that his mother did, right? She could love him even though she hurt him. Was she doing what she did in his best interest because of the way that she thought she would treat him? That she thought he would be saved in that trash can in the hospital where people could provide him the care? I don't know what was going on in the woman's mind. I have no idea. But I know the different story that Mark made up. What stories are you making up? What stories have I made up? Heaven knows I can make up a good story. It's a powerful process of transformation to help us balance and heal this stuff in our lives. Can you imagine being Mark and carrying that story through your life for 35 years to be freed from it? How freeing. Oh my goodness. It's a transformation, isn't it? It's a transformation. So this will work in all areas of our lives. It'll work if there's a career thing you've been dealing with. It'll work if there's a relationship challenge. It'll work if there's a financial challenge. Maybe you've got issues in your money that just never quite works right. Your health. Maybe there's a story you're telling yourself about your health. I'm this way because of this. I'm that way because of this. Whatever the because is in your life, take a closer look at it. Maybe run this process on it. It might be revealing. It might be revealing. So it's a simple but powerful process to heal the past and to balance our emotional charges, change our story, and align these lopsided perceptions we may be carrying with us. So I invite you to practice this week and see what happens. Call me if you get stuck. Call me if you get stuck. So I want to close this out today with a quote from John's book. It's the last quote in there, and it really is more of a blessing than just a quote. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable. We're going to go right into our prayer after this and just receive this blessing from his book, Count Your Blessings. May you stand wrapped in awe at the perfection and magnificence of this universe. May you listen to the wisdom of your heart and soul and obey. May you experience the blessings and healing power of the greatest force of all, unconditional love. And may you be thankful and may you be healed. So taking this beautiful sentiment into our prayer this morning, we recognize that unconditional love is God, and God is unconditional love. God is all that there is, the creator of all that has been, will be, or ever shall be on our planet and beyond. It is love itself, the essence and presence of intelligence and wisdom, of peace and harmony, of joy. And all of that is here now, present in, through, and as me. It is in this room, it is in each one of us as unique and individualized expressions of it, whole, perfect, and complete in our manifestation. We are that intelligence and wisdom, the love, the harmony, the joy, and the peace. All of that and so much more. And so from this place of knowing, I speak my word this day on each of us, a word of thanksgiving for this thing called life that lives us, for this thing called love that we are of, for love in our planet, peace on our planet, joy on our planet, just an incredibly grateful heart for all of the good, believing that we are all manifestations of the divine and therefore we are all good, irrespective of the choices we may make that may appear to be otherwise. It's all love, it's all God, and it's all good. So I know for anyone that has anything on their heart that they are seeking healing or revealing or flow around this day, whatever the issue may be, that it is lifted into this prayer consciousness this morning. And the healing is revealed, the information or the clarity, whatever it is, we know that Spirit knows already that if the question is arisen, the answer is also there, and the answer is within, and it is revealed with ease and grace this morning. And so as we move into the Thanksgiving week, I just speak a word of thanksgiving, a word of blessing upon us all. Those who are not with us today, who are traveling, those who are spending time with family, those who are doing whatever they are doing in service to their soul this day, we are just blessed in thanksgiving and gratitude. And so I release this into the action of law, the activity of mind, knowing that it is done and it is so, and we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.